Welcome back to Connect. A candidate for Mayor of Toronto was on the defensive today. George Smitherman is accused of doing something that's still taboo for politicians.
What happened? What did you say?
Did you drop the F-bomb?
No, absolutely not.
Did you use some of the ideas?
A volunteer for a rival candidate says Smitherman did swear at her last night. Smitherman insists he didn't, and 3 witnesses from his campaign have sworn affidavits to back him up. That's how potent swearing can be in official circles. Just ask Rahm Emanuel. A new book says the White House Chief of Staff was at a high-level meeting on the auto bailout when he dismissed auto workers with a single phrase, F the UAW. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. While the White House has rushed to Emanuel's defense, the president of the UAW says he takes no offense at all. Maybe it's because auto workers know all about the usefulness of swearing on the job. So, does profanity belong in the workplace? Jim O'Connor says no, never. He's founder of the Cuss Control Academy, and he joins me from Chicago. And from Los Angeles, I'm joined by Steve Anderson. His documentary explores all aspects of the F word. Thank you for joining us, both of you. Jim, I'd like to start with you. You say swearing is not appropriate in the workplace. Why is that?
Well, it's very unprofessional, and I think the biggest problem with it is usually swearing is accompanied by some sort of negative thought, complaining, criticizing, whining, even name-calling. And a lot of people find it very offensive, and they may not say that, but it adds stress to those people who don't like to hear it.
Well, Steve, what do you say to that it can stress people out who don't care to swear in the workplace?
Well, I think it all has to do, like many of these things, with context. These are impact words, especially the F word, and I don't think anyone would say that swearing in the workplace in general is a good thing. But we need certain words like the F word and other words at certain moments in our lives, and sometimes it's just really appropriate and it feels really good to use them.
Jim, I see you shaking your head a little bit there. What about the argument that it normalizes what goes on in the workplace? If we swear outside the office, why not occasionally in the office?
Well, if we swear outside the home, can we swear inside the home? And there's certain places and times and situations where you shouldn't swear. As Steve said, it helps relieve stress for the person who swears, but not for the people who have to hear it.
What about the argument that it can unify people? Jim, there's a study out of Britain that showed that employees felt that there was some solidarity amongst themselves if they all had a common lingo. Is there any validity to that argument?
Well, there's validity to it because they did a study, but I don't think they asked everybody in the company. There's lots of people who won't admit that they're bothered by the swearing, but they are. And again, it's that negativity, that hostility and belligerence and complaining, and companies want employees who are positive, have can-do attitudes, who are cooperative, and maybe there's some camaraderie, but you can do that without swearing because we did it for decades in most workplaces.
Steve, what do you think about that argument that we can function without having to swear occasionally, so why should we encourage or allow it?
Well, I certainly think we can function without swearing, but I take a little different view than Jim does, and Jim was good enough to be in my film to take this position. But oftentimes when I swear, it's among friends, it's among colleagues, and it's a way to that we all clear the air, and we just, it's a good way to communicate. Now, it doesn't mean that every other word is the F-bomb or we're swearing all the time. But oftentimes, the F word can be very funny. I mean, comedians have used it all the time. George Carlin, there's certainly clean comedians as well. But I think we make too much of a big deal about these swear words. I mean, I think this episode, the mayor or the person running for mayor clearly felt like he'd been attacked and lashed out. It's essentially a fleeting expletive. It reminds me, quite frankly, of last December, CBC's own legend, Don Cherry, was confronted by a radio reporter who then taped him and then played it. And interestingly enough, CBC's head of sports got on the radio and said the apology should go the other way, and I agree with him.
So, Steve, why do you think that that's the case, that there is so much tension around cuss words and potty mouth, so to speak? If a lot of people use it, and there was recently a poll that showed almost 2/3 of Canadians use the F word, why is there still so much concern and discussion and debate around it?
Well, I think a part of it is what Jim says, is oftentimes it is used in anger or it's used in frustration. And quite frankly, the word, at least the F word itself, goes back to the sexual meaning of it, which makes many people uncomfortable, continues to do so, especially in the States, which is still very Puritan about such things. And I just think that we need certain words like this. I think that language is actually made greater because we have certain words we set aside that we only use in very special occasions, or we should only use as impact words, and it broadens our scope of communication. And look, I don't swear in the workplace. It depends upon what your workplace is. You can imagine the production office for a film, when we were making the film about the F word, was just rife with it, and it was, you know, part of the natural day that we went on. But I wouldn't go into an interview or speak to someone at a restaurant. You know, you have to learn the right places to use them, and there certainly are places where you shouldn't use them, but, you know, it's a fun word, and swearing can be a lot of fun.
So you're saying take the temperature of the room but before you drop an F-bomb or what have you. Jim, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, you know, Steve says he swears among his colleagues, and that's probably in a small group, but you got to be careful who's sitting down the hall or nearby. And as Steve says, it has impact, but it doesn't have impact anymore. I mean, everyone's heard it, everyone's used to it, but they're still offended by it. It's lazy language. That's why you hear the F word so much, because it's a very versatile word: noun, verb, adjective,
now,
dangling participle, everything.
Jim, as part of the Cuss Control Academy, you go into workplaces and you work with employees to try to clean up the potty language, but some of the stuff you teach, you know, take a deep breath instead of swearing, or say forget it instead of drop in a swear word. Is that practical? I mean, how do employees take to what you're telling them?
Well, it makes sense to them, because most people don't think about it. They say, well, everybody swears, it's just the way it is these days. But when they realize that they're creating a negative atmosphere, they're making themselves look unprofessional, they're making themselves look immature, it's lazy language. You know, if everyone starts swearing all the time, we're going to have a pandemic of profanity, because these words are versatile. The F word is very versatile. So it's going to lose all of its impact. If you want to have impact, use it rarely in extreme situations.
Well, no doubt we could have this conversation for quite a while yet, and this topic will come up again and again, but we're out of time, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And we managed to have this discussion without using any expletives. Good on us, eh? Thank you both.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Well, it appears some companies have already made up their minds on swearing, especially financial companies. For example, Goldman Sachs recently revised its code of conduct, instructing employees not to use profanity in emails or text messages. It and other banks installed computer software that finds swear words and replaces profanity with asterisks. The New York Stock Exchange bans foul language on the trading floor, and CME Group, which owns the world's largest futures and options exchange, has fines of up to $20,000 per infraction for swearing. Yikes. Well, Reshmi is back with an update now on Hurricane Earl and more stories making news.